Howdy YouTube family, it's Bolt SRNA coming to you today with another day's topic. So I have Natalya here, my classmate, fellow SRNA. She is coming in to talk to you guys about anxiety in CRNA school. Some of us have it worse than others. We're all going to have anxiety in CRNA school, but some people have a pretty strong version of it. And Natalya is going to talk to you guys about how you deal with that today. Let's get into it. All right, Natalya. So, would you say that you have a small amount of anxiety, moderate, or a high level of anxiety?
I definitely have high level of anxiety.
High anxiety, okay. And so, do you feel like CRNA school made that worse?
Absolutely.
It did? Okay.
Absolutely.
And can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like for your life and how you deal with that?
Yeah, I would love to. So, I'm happy to say that I'm a lot better than what I was, like a ton better. I don't get anxious. I don't get that anxious anymore about things, not as bad as I used to. But for me, so this is a little story that I'm just going to share real quick, but this is how bad my anxiety was. I ended up in the emergency room one time before a test that we had to take. It was our junior year.
Yeah.
And literally because I just psyched myself out so bad, I ended up in the emergency room. But so this is just to show you guys that, yes, I have high level of anxiety. But I think, what you have to do is find the root cause of what causes it for you. Yes, tests and things like that are stressors, but you have to kind of look inside and figure out what the actual cause is. For me, it was my confidence. It's something that I've struggled with for years. And until I finally started to make active changes towards, working to be more confident in what I'm doing and just about myself in general, that anxiety level was pretty high. So I would say just find your root cause and start working on that. And, if you have to go talk to somebody like a counselor, which I did as well, then don't be ashamed of that. I think a lot of people feel like they're less than or something is wrong with them if they have to, reach out for help. It's really not a sign of weakness, to go see or talk to somebody.
Yeah, I actually believe that if you, as soon as you get accepted into CRNA school, they should go ahead and just send you a list of local counselors in the area. Hopefully that they're subsidized by the school, so you don't have to pay the bill for it. But pretty much every single one of you who starts CRNA school, you're going to benefit from a counselor at least at some point throughout the program.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. Well, I actually went to the one that our school offered, and, we get a few sessions for free, so...
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that helped. I didn't, stick out the whole process or anything, but it did help to go talk to somebody at least a few times.
Because sometimes, especially when you're in high anxiety situations like CRNA school, you lose perspective on the world. And you get so stressed that a lot of your endorphins and hormones and stuff kind of get out of balance. And because you're on your mindset's so negative, you're on the edge all the time, your cortisol levels are up. You start losing interest in things that are fun that you like doing because you really don't have time to do them anymore anyway. So you just spend a lot of your time doing things that like schoolwork and studying and being clinical and things that are not really the most fun things for you to do, more stressful things. So when you go and talk to somebody from the outside world who's not connected to anesthesia and you hear their perspective, and sometimes they'll say things to you that kind of, break through the fog, and you realize, oh, there is a life after CRNA school and there is good things in my life right now. And sometimes that's all you need.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. But I think also they kind of point you in a direction of like a different train of thought type of process where, they tell you different little tips that you can utilize to help you with, positive self-talk instead of, always talking negative to yourself, like, oh, I'm going to fail, or thinking in, black and white. And
do you feel like you talk negatively to yourself, at least in the past?
I did for a very long time, and what I started doing was, it was kind of like reverse psychology in a way, but instead of that, I made it a point to where I just said positive things to myself instead of saying, I'm going to fail. I told myself, you're going to do great. And all right. So part of it also depends on how well you're prepared, actually a huge part. So if you're not well prepared, your anxiety level is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
But what I did, like I said, I kept on telling myself that, yes, you can do it. And I surrounded myself with little, things like phrases. I know it sounds silly, but, just seeing that, like I had a screensaver on my computer that said, you got this. Mm-hmm. So every time I opened my computer before a test, it was kind of like another little thing that was like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
And it kind of calms you down a little bit.
For sure.
And, I just, before every test, would just kind of take a few seconds to myself, because our tests are timed. So, but, I would just take 3 deep breaths, take those few seconds, say my little prayer, and go ahead and start it, and just, kind of go from there. I will say during the test, like if you freak out, like if there's a question that you come across and you're like, oh my God, I don't know this. Also come up with some tips that kind of, little tips and tricks that, kind of take your mind off of that racing mind where you're like, okay, I don't know this, then it like throws you off and you become anxious again.
You catch yourself before you spin out of control with your mindset of like, oh my God, I don't know this. Oh, I don't know the last question either. Oh, I answered most of these wrong. And, that kind of thing. And I'll just say, someone who is not as anxious and doesn't deal with as much of anxiety and probably deal with more of my problem would probably be skewed more towards like overconfidence at times. I still get anxious in CRNA school. I still will have moments on an exam where I'm like, oh my God, I definitely don't know the answer to this question. And I kind of panic a little bit, and I start thinking about, well, what if I don't do well in this test? What does that mean if I don't pass this class? Am I going to have to, never become an anesthesia provider? Your brain can definitely, and even clinically, and not even just talking about tests, but in the clinical, you can start getting anxious about like, which medication did I give? Oh man, did I look at the label 4 times that I should have looked at it 4 times? And sometimes I'll find myself even picking it up out of the trash, the vial that I threw away, and looking at it for the 5th time and be like, oh no, I know for sure this is Zofran or whatever. Right. Because you have this fear and anxiety behind you that you're going to make a mistake, you're going to do something wrong. And
that's why so many of us are OCD, honestly.
Definitely.
Triple check everything.
Yeah. So anxiety is a very real issue, and finding ways to cope with it and deal with it is very important for no matter whether you're someone who does deal with more strong anxiety or someone who is more of a overconfident type person who's not usually as anxious. You will experience it in CRNA school.
Absolutely. And also, like, when you do say those things to yourself, like, oh my God, I'm going to fail. Well, think of, okay, so if you do fail, think of an alternative so you fail. That doesn't mean that you're going to fail the whole program. Right. Most of the time it's not. Go talk to the professors, figure out what went wrong, look back at your study habits and things like that. But just know that one downfall isn't going to be the end of everything for you. Right.
And most students who are worrying about failing and stuff, they're probably not going to fail. Most of us do not fail. So, I mean, understand that just because you're afraid you're going to fail, and all of us at some point in the program, even if you're a really great student, you have this fear or anxiety that something is going to stop you from succeeding. Something is going to, whether it be failing a test or doing something wrong in clinical that gets you in trouble or something. All of us have that, or a car accident or whatever. You're all going to have that anxiety moment where you're like, what if I cannot complete CRNA school? Right. What if something holds me down? Right. The reality is almost all of us pass. Almost all SRNAs, year after year after year, graduate and pass and continue on. So statistically, it's in your favor. You're going to do fine. So just don't let your brain get into that cycle of psyching yourself out.
Spiral out of control,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think also one little tip that most people don't think about, but something that helped me to kind of refocus maybe a little bit, I started doing things outside of school. Like things that, I haven't done much before or was because I was not really fearful, but didn't think that I was good enough to do it, or I was kind of concerned that maybe, I don't know, people are going to look at me funny if I did something or whatnot.
Yeah.
But so I just took those opportunities and just went ahead and did all of those things. And, that kind of gave you a sense of accomplishment in a way after you have done them. And slowly that kind of started to transfer into my testing anxiety too, because I kind of started looking at it like, okay, well, I was able to do the other things successfully and accomplished all of those other things. So why am I stressing out over this exam? I was like, I can kind of approach it in a similar manner.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, I can do this exam too.
You conquered this one thing,
right,
and you can conquer that thing too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just another thing on my list, and you check it off.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that not a lot of people think about or hear about when it comes to anxiety, but it's something that helped me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you felt like things were getting really bad, out of control, like for the time where you had to go to the ER because you were having a panic attack or something, what coping mechanisms did you use to help you through those moments?
So I'm a religious person, so for me, I always turn to God in like really, really bad times like that. And people who don't go through anxiety, like bad anxiety and panic attacks, don't really understand. They're like, just snap out of it. And you really can't. Like it almost feels like you're in this state of doom, and just like your body's not your own.
Right.
Like I literally shook. Like every time I come into a test, like our first year, I was shaking. Like I was doing this with my hands without even.
A lot of people in class were shaking. I have seen you. A lot of people are like that, actually. Yeah. I mean, to the point where there's people who will not come in for the exam until the minute before you're supposed to start, because it makes them anxious, and they start panicking to be in the room with other students sitting there. Maybe the students are talking or whatever.
About potential questions and things like that.
It makes people panic and stuff.
I was one of them. I would come in later.
You're right. And see, I'm a total opposite person. Like I can if I walk in a minute before the exam starts, it's because I just showed up in the parking lot.
You walk in late most of the time anyway.
Hey, I show up right on time.
Right on time.
But maybe a minute late. But yeah, I'm different. Like I don't care. I'll walk in, and you can be talking about test questions or whatever, and I'll be like, whatever. It doesn't shake me, but there are a lot of other people in class that definitely will get to. So
yeah, I did that for a while, where I just would come in pretty much last minute. But lately, I just what I started doing was I just kind of zoned out. Yes, people are talking and everything, but I just focused on something else. I just would open my computer, and I don't know if there's a few minutes. If I wanted to study, then I would just look over PowerPoint. If not, then I just go on the internet and go look at something. Yeah. But just try not to listen, because you got 10 people talking, 10 people have different opinions. The one thinks that this is the right answer, the other thinks it's something else. And by the time, on a test, when you have a similar question or something that pops up, you're like, well, what the crap? I'm like, now I really don't know what to think. Like,
now you're nervous.
You're trying to remember all these things that people said. And,
We have one classmate, she actually comes in and she has like her own little barrier thing that she puts up, and she sits in the very back far corner on the last row, puts her barrier up. She lights her incense or her scented aromatherapy lavender or whatever she uses back there, because you can smell it. It's like mint today, or it's lavender today, and she'll pick stuff out. She has
good.
She has headphones that she wears, or earplugs that she puts in her ears so she cannot hear you. It's like sound canceling stuff. That's every single exam throughout the whole program. She's been like that. So, I mean, you'll do whatever you've got to do.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Anxiety.
Absolutely. If that's what helps, then do it. Most of your professors are going to be accommodating to that, because they understand it's real. And, worst comes to worst, sometimes, they will let you take the exam in a separate room.
It's happened. There are students who will say, I want to take this exam in a completely separate room by myself. And they do that.
And, I can see a benefit to that, too, because for me, another stressor in the beginning was, everybody, I'm a slower test taker. So, when you're one of the last people that's sitting in a room and everybody's left, I'm like, oh, my God, I don't know anything. I'm going to fail this. Like, you just have this, feeling I don't know, like, why am I the only person left in this room?
I saw a meme the other day that said in nursing school, everybody was looking at the first person to walk out of the room after the test and be like, oh man, they're so smart, and they start panicking. Right. But in CRNA school, when you see the first person like get done the test in 10 minutes and walk out, you're like, oh my God, this person doesn't know anything. Like they just marked A on everything and took off. Because you're like, there is no way that they appropriately answered those questions that fast. Right. So yeah, in CRNA school, it's different. You definitely don't want to be the very first person finishing because you probably did not read the questions very well. And the questions are tricky and worded hard. So take your time and don't allow yourself to panic thinking other people are finishing before you because they're smarter or whatever. You need to take your time and really make sure you're reading appropriately and getting the right
Absolutely.
answer.
In fact, just don't worry about anybody else but that test and yourself. Just focus on that.
Yeah.
You've got a timer. You've got, say it's 60 minutes. It doesn't matter if somebody left in 1 second, if somebody left in 30 minutes. Yeah. You got those 60 minutes to yourself. Take them.
When you get your doctorate and you walk across that stage, it won't matter whether you took an hour on that exam or you took 30 minutes. Now, I say that with a caveat that there are our tests are timed, so you can't take too long because that will cut you off and you will fail. But you can take as much time within that allotted time they give you to spend on that exam.
Right, and the other caveat to that is, yes, take your time and read the questions, but I'm one of the worst at going back and changing my answers.
Don't do it. Statistically, I've read research on it, and the statistics show that your first answer is most likely the correct answer.
Absolutely.
So stick with your first answer.
Stick with your first answer, I promise you. Unless you're absolutely 100% positive that the answer you're changing it to is the right one.
Yeah. Maybe.
Don't do it.
Maybe.
Don't do it.
Yeah. All right, so besides test taking, anxiety, and things like that, is there anything else that you wanted to share with our YouTube family here about anxiety or how to deal with that if they're going into CRNA school afraid that they're going to be battling that?
Okay, so first of all, don't be ashamed of it. We, like Jason said, a lot of us do have it. Some are just more extreme than others. I'm more on, the extreme end. He is not. But we all, at some point, come across it. And don't let that stop you, because you can work through it. You can find different ways that will help you along. And I think the further you get along in the program, the more confidence you get. And, you start learning more about anesthesia and developing better skills and things like that. And I think that helps you grow in that respect as well. And so that kind of lessens your anxiety. And, to be honest, another thing, a little bit of anxiety is not a bad thing. I think it keeps you on your toes.
It does.
It keeps you safe.
Yeah.
So
I think our professors would agree with you that they don't want you to be anxiety free. They don't want to see that you're completely carefree and you've got this and you're confident all the time. That actually puts a lot of preceptors and anesthesia professionals on edge if they see an SRNA, especially a senior third year SRNA like we're at in our point in the program. They don't want to see us overconfident or allowing ourselves to be like, I'm good, I got all this, because that's when you make a mistake.
Absolutely.
So it is good to have a little bit of anxiety just so that you're on edge, you're sharp, and you're keeping it, you're keeping everything under your eye.
And, I'm not a prescriber, but maybe another thing, if it's really that bad, then go talk to your doctor. Maybe they'll put you on a beta blocker or something like that, like a really small dose. And, that's something that you can take in clinical and still go to clinical fine. Yeah. So, like I said, if it's to that extreme, maybe that's something to consider.
Yeah, but or an SSRI or just something minor that gives you that little bit of boost throughout school. Yeah. Some people need that, and there are people in our program who've gone on them since we've been in, and so it's definitely not something to be ashamed of or to avoid. This is something temporary. Once you get out of CRNA school, your life will be very different. At least they tell us. They keep telling us.
They keep on telling us. Yeah,
I'm gonna.
We'll find out in a couple of months. I guess.
Yeah, we got a couple more months, but I assume they're not lying to us. So
I hope not.
When we get out, things will be different, and so while you're in, take care of yourself. Meditate. Pray if you're spiritual. Make sure and talk to a counselor, especially if you need that sounding wall, or have a good mentor in your church or a family member or somebody that you can go to all the time. I've used my parents a whole lot more throughout this program. I'm 31 years old. I did not expect at 30 years old to be calling my parents, needing them just to listen to me complain about something.
Oh, I've called my mom multiple times, crying, bawling my eyes out. That woman saved me through this whole program, I think.
Yeah.
But surround yourself with people that are there to support you.
Yeah.
It might not be, 50 people or anything like that. It might be a small group, but just find those people that are there and are rooting for you and are pulling for you, so you don't have to deal with the negativity of, people that are not there for you, basically.
And sadly, it's human nature. There will be people who aren't there for you, and there will be people who may say something behind your back or whatever and cause your anxiety to be worse. You just have to learn how to shut that off and say, that person's not somebody I care about in my life, and I'm not focusing on that. So those are all really great tips, Natalya. I really appreciate you sharing some of your personal journey and how you deal with some of this stuff that causes anxiety in CRNA school. And I'm sure some of you guys watching this deal with anxiety. If you want to, you can comment down below, and I can kind of communicate back and forth with you. You can find Natalya over on Instagram. She's her name is Natalya Malenko over there, and I'll link that down below so you can follow her on Instagram. And you can direct message her and, kind of follow her along and see what her journey's been like through CRNA school. And of course, like always, you can follow me. I'm Bolt SRNA on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll, of course, interact with you over there too. So follow me over there. Comment down below. Hit that subscription button and that like button if you like this video and want more stuff like it. And that's Bolt out.